Welcome to our Building a Nuclear-Free World Talk Story series. My name is José Barzola from the Matsunaga Institute for Peace at the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa. Our talk story today is on the public health effects of nuclear impact and the government's response with Kristin Lau and moderated by myself today. Thank you for joining us today to learn about the tragic impact of nuclear bombs. Our talk story is a part of a Building a Nuclear-Free World exhibit that was available at the Hamilton Library Bridge Gallery here at the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa. It was available between March and April of this year. And was hosted by both the National Nagasaki Memorial Hall for the Atomic Bomb Victims, the Hiroshima Atomic Bomb Museum, and here at the Matsunaga Institute as well. With the continuous threat of nuclear devastation around the world, learning about and working to build a nuclear-free world has never been timelier. Building a Nuclear-Free World continues the Matsunaga Institute's long engagement with public outreach on the nuclear threat, which actually started back in 1995 with our 50th anniversary of the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, where we mounted an exhibition for the 50 years of the bomb. Since then, the exhibition has been updated and mounted most recently in 2018 and 2020. This year's exhibit was a completely new exhibit that we hope to be able to bring out in the near future, again, for our community to learn further, and explore dialogue around these issues. Although the exhibit has now ended, we encourage you to continue in our Beyond the Exhibit that is available on our Beacons page. And I'll put that link not only in the summary of our YouTube video, but also in the chat shortly after. Today, thank you for joining us to learn about how nuclear impacts, such as the atomic bombings in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan, and the nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands affected the community and its environment. Kristin Lau will discuss the policies or reparations made by the government after these events and whether they were effective in improving public health. Our special guest today is Kristin Lau, who's an undergraduate student pursuing major in public health and also a Peace Corps prep certificate at the University of Hawai'i at Mānoa. She's currently interning with the Matsunaga Institute for Peace, strengthening her value of peace building within the community. So thank you all for being here today. Really appreciate you all for taking time and sharing some space this morning. To get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Kristin, who will lead today's session. Thank you again.
Aloha, and thank you, Jose, for the introduction. Again, my name is Kristin, and today I'll be sharing some knowledge about the public health effect of nuclear impact and the government response to it. I will primarily be looking at the atomic bomb in Japan and the nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands, which are the events that have occurred during or after World War II. Before I begin, I will be sharing my screen. Okay. I also like to thank the Matsunaga Institute for Peace for allowing me to intern with them and present and share this presentation. So here's just a quick summary of what I'll be going over today. I will start with an introduction, then looking at the community health effect of the atomic bombing in Japan, and later the Marshall Islands nuclear testing, and then the overall environmental effect of nuclear weapons. I will lastly look at the political aspect of the issue and analyze what ways the government has engaged in nuclear non-proliferation through policies and reparations. Lastly will be my acknowledgement. So I'll be skipping this slide as Jose has shared a quick bio about me. But again, my interest in public health is in environmental and community health, as well as infectious and chronic diseases, as well on the Matsunaga Institute side, peace promotion and international relations through policies and intervention. To start, I want to share a bit of background about the atomic bombing in Japan. Atomic bomb framed Little Boy and Fat Man were two B-29 bombers that hit Hiroshima and Nagasaki respectively. Little Boy was a uranium bomb that made its impact on August 6, 1945, with Fat Man following on August 9th as a plutonium bomb. The overall death toll of the bombing between this time frame in 1945 was almost 75,000 at 74,884, with 74,909 injured. These are some of the photos that demonstrate the visualization of what the bombs look like. Before I move on, I would like to share that the following slides are information that I have gathered from my visit in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, Japan in February of 2023. The information I will relay to you is from the Peace Museum. So looking at the Fat Man atomic bomb in Hiroshima, Japan, the community health effects were very devastating and severe. From the Hiroshima Peace Museum, called the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, it was shared that the immediate signs and symptoms from the blast after effect were heat burns, external wounds, and malnutrition, due to everything being contaminated. The after effects signs and symptoms, or those that didn't develop until years later, were malignant and benign tumors, cataract, atomic bomb-related neurological problems, keloids, and more. Keloids is what is referred to as burn scars, which would often cause pain and frequent itching, and would appear about 4 months after the bombing, but become more visible 6 to 14 months after. If you look at the picture of the man in a more prominent black and white photo, you can see some of the after effects of the radiation through the site of the keloids throughout his body. Next is the little boy atomic bomb in Nagasaki, Japan. I would like to share that some of this information was provided to me by the Nagasaki National Peace Memorial Hall for the atomic bomb victim, who shared about the signs and symptoms the victim faced after the bombing. However, there are many stories that were told that I will share in the next slide. Nonetheless, some of the signs and symptoms that the victims in Nagasaki experienced were burns, keloid scars, and motor impairment due to the stretching or pulling of the skin. Various cancers were also noted, such as leukemia, due to the cellular effect radiation can cause on the body. I would like to emphasize that while I highlighted these signs and symptoms that the Hibakushas have experienced, the stories that were told and written demonstrate the severity of the aftermath of the bombing. So now look at the visuals. Here are some of the photos that I recalled were on display in the Peace Museum in Hiroshima, but the quotes that I will be sharing were from the Nagasaki Peace Museum that when I read it, showed the desperation and perseverance some, if not all, Hibakushas had. As I read through these two quotes, please remember that these are individuals, Hibakushas who have lived at that time and shared their testimony and envisioned the true fear and pain that was felt by many of these children. To begin, I'll be sharing Sachiko Samaguchi, who was 9 years old at the time of the atomic bombing, and what she found as a testimony. Desperately thirsty, I went to draw water, but found an oil-like substance floating all over. People told me that the oil had rained down from the sky, which was the atomic rain fallout. But I wanted a drink so badly that I gulped the water down just as it was. Another testimony was from Michiko Uchino, who was 10 years old. In quote, they say, but mother sank exhausted to the ground. Her hair was red and frizzled. Her skin was burned and festering all over her body. The skin had ripped right off the shoulder she had applied to the beam. The muscle was visible and blood was streaming out. She soon began to writhe in agony, and she died later that night. I would also want to mention that these individuals were young children who, instead of playing with their fellow classmates or friends, had to learn to survive, sometimes without food or water, or continue life without their mother, father, or close friend who passed from the atomic bomb destruction. Looking further into some of the testimonies shared by the Hibakushas, I had the privilege to meet 2 Hibakushas, one from Nagasaki and another from Hiroshima. In Nagasaki, we listened to Shohei Tsuzuki, who was a young man at the time of the atomic bombing. He shared how he witnessed women, children, and elderly around the neighborhood having passed or wounded from the bomb, recalling it felt like hell. As an atomic bomb survivor, he had burns that took months to recover, and as mentioned before, he had a keloid on his arm that still shows 70 years later. Next is Keiko Sagura, who was 8 years old at the time of the atomic bombing of Batman in Hiroshima. She shared how one school held around 10,000 students, but 3,000 remained as 7,000 passed from the bombing. She recalled how they were a beg from victims for water, but they would pass away from drinking it due to the contamination due to the exposure caused by radiation. Now I want to shift gear and look towards the Marshall Islands, which was the experience of the nuclear testing, which was a similar event that used nuclear weapons, though not for the same purpose. In the Marshall Islands, the United States initiated nuclear testing for military purposes to create nuclear weapons. A nuclear test that I would like to talk more in depth about is the largest one, Castle Bravo, which was one of 67 nuclear tests that detonated in northern Marshall Islands between 1946 and 1958. Castle Bravo was classified as being nearly 1,000 times more intense than the atomic bombings in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and affected nearby atolls that had some inhabitants living there, such as Barzola, José, and Eliminate. From this nuclear test, the United States began Project 4.1, which looked at and studied the human health of the people in the Marshall Islands that were exposed to the radiation. But this project was criticized due to the researchers not obtaining the Marshallese consent to share that a study was being conducted or what the study was about. So going further into the community health effect of the nuclear testing, in the Marshall Islands, they had various signs and symptoms that they've experienced. The Marshallese from the Marshall Islands would experience poisoning due to the radioactive fallout, similar to the black rain from the atomic bombing in Japan. Thyroid cancer, hair loss, skin burn, vomiting, and jellyfish babies, or babies born without bones or with transparent skin, were some of the signs and symptoms and effects that were caused by the nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands. You might be thinking, why is cancer highlighted in red? Similar to Japan, the Marshall Islands population was also greatly affected by cancer, such as thyroid cancer, which causes an upset among the Marshallese because they have such a strong history through singing songs and with thyroid cancer that takes away that light and keeping the Marshallese folk traditions alive. The land and people were vibrant and healthy before the impact of the nuclear testing in the Marshall Islands. But now that changed. A former senator of the Marshall Islands from Majuro in Los Angeles Times shared that the traditional songwriting is dying because, in quote, we don't see composers anymore. Here you see a photo of a woman named Justina Landquist, who was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in 1984. The boy in the next picture is Kristin Lau, who was 11 and was born with hypothyroidism, which is defined as a condition where the gland cannot produce enough thyroid hormone, slowing down the person's metabolism. Other signs and symptoms that were on the rise were heart disease, diabetes, and obesity due to the change in lifestyle. Here's a few testimonies from the Marshall Islands that I found of those who had experienced nuclear testing. One was Masa Atari, who was from Utrecht and exposed at 7 years old, and another from Nathan Laucon, who was in Barzola and 1 year old. I would like to mention that the two atolls that were populated were Barzola and Utrecht, and these two received the largest amount of fallout, in particular from the Castle Bravo test, one of the largest tests from the United States. According to Ivana Nicholas Hughes, who became president of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation in 2022. I'll now take a step to share some of the atomic bombing. Yeah.
My name is Maja Atari from Utrecht. Utrecht from Center 287 miles north of Marshall Island.
Maza was one of 236 Marshallese dusted with radioactive fallout from the most destructive weapon in U.S. history, the Bravo shot of March 1, 1954. Their home atolls served as experimental grounds for detonating nuclear weapons too deadly and unpredictable to be tested on the U.S. mainland.
I was 7 years old at that time. And when the truck bomb too noisy, everybody get out from their house. Some people, they will sleep, but they wake up. We look at each other. What happened? And one of my grandfather, he's a king for the island. He told everybody that everybody don't have to drink water from the water catchment, the cement. We surprised because we can see the sky couple hours, maybe 2 to 3 hours, can see little like powder, cornflake coming down from the sky. And we don't know what to do. 2 days after, the ship come to our island, take us up to quartering, the military team. So we went there. And first thing I remember, take us by bus to the end of the quartering. We go to lagoon side and take shower. And they separate us, man from woman. And in our custom, men, they cannot take shower each other, even women, in our custom. But they do that for us. Combine us young men like myself, 7 years old, and my father, my grandfather, all family members. And after that, at the same day, they bring us to treat us. The radiation, how much radiation in our body. After we go back 3 months after we went to Kwajalein, when we go back, they told us not to drink local food, but they never give us any food. Where are we going to get the food?
What did you do?
We eat fish.
Huh?
We eat fish.
Fish.
And bread food. No rice, no flour. Well, we wait for the ship coming, every 3 months. The pilgrim ship come to, all over the Marshall Islands. So we go pound our cobra and get money from it, and then we buy flour, we buy rice. Yeah. We always talk story about the fallout, even now. We all want to let the children know that there was a time that dropped 1954. Now we almost talk every day about the problem.
In all, from 1946 to 1962, 86 Hiroshima-sized bombs were exploded in the Marshall Islands and neighboring atolls and waters over 16 years. And Bravo itself was 1,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Maza and the other Marshallese entered American history as the first ever examples of the effects of radioactivity on human beings who had escaped a nuclear explosion.
There are so many sick to the people of the Marshall Islands, not even for Africa. All of the Marshall Islands is contaminated. My brother died because of cancer. Even my sister, young sister, she died from cancer too. And almost everybody in my family, like my brother and sister, we are all diabetic. Right now, I can see some children around 13 and 14 years old. They become diabetic. Most of the people in Uduruk, they are diabetic. even my son. I always argue with doctor from theory, and they told us diabetic is not a radiation. It's not. But I myself, I believe, in those days, there was two kind of sickness. During the World War II, back to 1954, when we talked about everything changed. And so many kind of things we have.
Did you have diabetes before?
No, there was no diabetes in those days. And I know because I was born after World War II. And I know what kind of sick people get. And people, they live long enough. Right now, almost young generation die every day in Marshall Island.
So now that is a part of Masatai's testimony, and we'll go now into the nation Lau cause.
Says that she has thyroid nodules, that she suspects is from the radiation from the food she had to eat as a child.
I've got thyroid too, and I got blood pressure too, and I'm taking medicine for them. So I'm trying to tell my doctors, that, it's from the, hydrogen bomb, but I don't know. I was young, and I didn't really understand a lot of things.
Because the island was contaminated, the US government told the people in Rongelap not to eat the fish or the food that they farmed on their land. Nason says the US Army used to bring rations like flour and rice at the beginning of every year, but it was never enough.
And when we ran out of those, we will eat whatever we can eat on the island.
So when the rations ran out, the Marshallese on Rongelap had to eat the contaminated vegetables and fish.
You'll have blister in your mouth and your throat. You get diarrhea, you get sick. They come and check us every year, but they never really tell us that we were, living in a contaminated place.
Even though the United States knew that the people of Rongelap were dying from leukemia and other cancers, the US government didn't help evacuate these Marshallese from their contaminated island. So the people of Rongelap called on Greenpeace for help and used the group's Rainbow Warrior ship to flee the contaminated atoll for good in 1985.
The United States didn't want to help because they said it's okay to stay there. So the Greenpeace took them. You can't live on that island. You will still be sick. It's contaminated. You can't go back there.
How to kill all mosquitoes. And
Well, because the ad kind of disrupted that, I want to continue on to the environmental effect of the atomic bomb and the nuclear testing. So what about the environment? Well, the environment was impacted in different ways, from damaging agricultural crops to contamination of food and water, to even affecting marine life through coral bleaching, fish kills, and algae bloom, especially in the Marshall Islands. A cleanup in Anahuac in 1977 and 1980 was done. More of the cleanup workers hid radioactive waste by building a 3 centimeter thick cement dome, which is the ruined dome pictured on the bottom right. But now that is not effective, as it has been leaking for some time, which can potentially exacerbate climate change. In 1980, people of Anahuac returned and built their houses using the same soil used during cleanup, but that is becoming a health concern, and it's leading to increased migration of people from the Marshall Islands to other countries. In Japan, they had to face fires in buildings due to the heat waves of the radiation, to the fires that spread throughout the city after the atomic bomb. You can take a look at the 2 yellow photos of Nagasaki and Hiroshima that kind of shows how the fire spread. So what are some of the policies or reparations that the youth has done for the Marshall Islands? What were some of the solutions that they provided? For one, a series of treaties was created called COFA, or the Compact of Free Association, which ensures the United States provides medical care for the remaining 176 Marshallese directly affected by the Castle Bravo test. Some reparations that were done was an establishment of $150 million in compensation trust fund to support those affected, and the establishment of the Marshall Islands Nuclear Claims Tribunal, which was created to compensate for cancers, burns, birth defects, etc. caused by the nuclear testing. Furthermore, the Compact Impact Fairness Act, as 792, was a bill that would amend the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Act of 1996 to provide certain federal public benefits to citizens of the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Republic of Palau, who are lawfully residing in the United States and are otherwise qualified. This was introduced back in March 2023 by Senator Mazie Hirono. It would restore the eligibility for COFA citizens to receive public benefits such as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, temporary assistance for needy families, supplemental security income, and other services. But in recent years, the Marshallese under COFA have been migrating to Hawaii to obtain better health care, education, and a place to stay. However, when you look at the Marshallese and how they were treated in Hawaii, based on the Hawaii Scholars for Education and Social Justice research brief in 2022, it was mentioned that the state of Hawaii dropped more than half of its COFA citizens from its healthcare program. This means that low-income residents were especially prone as the program became less effective, giving less services and benefits. Though there are some organizations locally that are moving to support COFA citizens, some that I would like to point out are the Marshallese Community Organization of Hawaii, the Waipahu Safe Haven Immigrant Resource Center, We Are Oceania, and Cultural and Health Alliance, which is a small community-based group that is focused on preserving culture and promoting health. These are organizations that focus on addressing the needs of the Marshallese community through providing services such as education and healthcare resources. For the United States government to Japan, the policies that they did was making an agreement through treaties. From the treaties shared by the United States, Japan, and other international countries, I found two treaties that were formed. The 1960 United States-Japan Security Treaty, a treaty of mutual cooperation and security between the United States and Japan, was a powerful contract that underpins the stability and enable extraordinary prosperity of the Asia-Pacific region. A conclusion of the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, or NPT, as of August 2022, was that there was no final consensus, which was raising concerns about weakening efforts to promote nuclear non-proliferation, disarmament, and peaceful use of nuclear energy. Though between the United States and Japan in January 2022, they shared a statement that demonstrates their commitment to the NPT, which further shows the hope of becoming effective and the forefront in maintaining peace between the two nations. However, these are governmental treaties that were created for the purpose of nuclear non-proliferation and alliance. Were they effective in supporting or aiding the victims of Hibakusha? No. While reparations such as an apology could factor in as an important piece to supporting and acknowledging Hibakusha, unfortunately, no policies were made by the U.S. President, former and present. If an apology was made, however, it would cause potential conflict and international demand to apologize to the Marshall Islands as well for the nuclear testing conducted on the land. From the atomic bombing survivors of Nagasaki and Hiroshima, their main hope to the United States government was and continues to be the chance of being recognized and officially acknowledged in their stories and to show and know the truth of the damages that bombings have inflicted. It is a hope for not only the United States, but all countries to move towards nuclear non-proliferation and make an effort towards that to abolish nuclear weapons. What about the Marshallese or Japanese government and their support to their people? While in Japan, they provided different policies or organizations such as the A-bomb or atomic bomb survivors medical care law, Hiroshima Prefectural Confederation of Atomic Bomb Sufferers Organization, and Atomic Bomb Survivors Treatment Council. The medical care law included hibakushas or those classified under Japanese government as individuals affected by the atomic bomb or radiation who receive free medical examination for 2 times a year, coverage of medical expenses by the government, and an allowance for them to assist in any medical assistance or attention that they may need or have. Were the Hibakushas satisfied, or did they find comfort in the treatment that they were given by the Japanese government? This is hard to say, as some would say yes, that the coverage by the medical care law was sufficient, but others would say it wasn't. Now, for the Japanese government, there is an issue on whether an individual can be classified as an atomic bombing survivor or not. And this is because as the year goes on, more people are coming out with health effects, but the Japanese government does not know whether that is caused by the atomic bombing in World War II or for other reasons. So what about the Marshallese Islands, or the Marshallese and the Marshall Islands? For them, the main purpose was support through the Nuclear Claim Tribunal, which was held up from the American funding that they received. Through the COFA Alliance, they restored the healthcare program to provide Medicaid and access to healthcare, to address healthcare needs and provide community a sense of honor and dignity, because for so long they've been kicked out from the home, ignored of or misled or dismissed when questioning what happened. More needs to be done to support the community health in both Japan and the Marshall Islands. But in the Marshall Islands, they would like access for health and resources, such as health and health literacy programs, given their unique language, culture, and lifestyle. They want you to continue to share their story. Do not be ashamed to speak up and speak out. Remember their culture, their ancestors, and their knowledge and wisdom, and to never forget what they've experienced as well as their family and their community. Furthermore, I would like to share some resources that were provided by the Matsunaga Institute for Peace during the Free Nuclear World exhibit. You can check out their beacon page through the QR code. They also have a documentary by Kathy Gentile Kinsinger called Important, which kind of shows more about the Marshall Islands and what they are going through in terms of the nuclear testing and what that caused in the aftermath. So this concludes the end of my presentation. I would like to acknowledge the following organizations and faculty for supporting me and guiding me through this project. Dr. Maya Sotoro Ng, Mr. José Barzola from the Matsunaga Institute for Peace program, the tour guides and those involved who assisted me and the Matsunaga Institute group in Japan at the Nagasaki National Memorial, Peace Memorial Hall for the atomic bomb victims, and the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum, such as Ikesono-san, Nakiko-san, and Neo-san, and from the COFA organization, Mr. David Anatok. Thank you very much for your help. I would like to now open the floor for any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you so much, Kristin, for delving so deep into this topic. And I really just want to thank you for providing a unique lens to this, especially with your background in public health. Folks in the audience who may not be aware, so we actually had 4 students that went on this journey this semester, visiting Pearl Harbor, visiting Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And what was really wonderful is it's coming from their own educational background, their own perspective and passions that they have. And so from there, they've developed presentations based on what they've taken in. And so it's just kind of this evolution. It's been really wonderful to see. We always talk about how everyone has different lived experience, different perspectives that folks are bringing to the table. That not only sometimes create conflict, but there's also great opportunities to learn from that. And that's exactly, there's so much wonderful information that you shared today, and it's been able to, I'm still processing. And thank you for delving further into, beyond the testing that has continued on. And it is quite shocking how, it wasn't something that like, oh yeah, we'll provide you resources. Like, there had been some resources, but it took a couple decades for that to kind of come about. I want to acknowledge some questions from our audience. We have someone in the chat that I'll read off what they wrote. Acknowledging the limitations of enacting accountability of the United Nations, are there global agreements on nuclear warfare and pollution that the United States has violated to these various communities?
Thank you for your question. So in regards to the global agreement on nuclear warfare and pollution, that I feel like they're more talked in the general sense and not focused on the specific communities. I would say that the United States, I don't think, violated the agreement. In regard, they just don't know too much information to further support the various communities that were affected by nuclear proliferation, nuclear disarmament, and those issues around nuclear weapons. As for your next question, I haven't looked too deeply into the number of
Really quickly, I
percentage.
just want to, for folks who aren't able to read the chat, the follow-up question, is there data out there about how many people have been affected? Take it away.
Yeah. So I haven't looked too deeply into the number or quantity of individuals that were affected in the Marshall Islands based on the different atolls, just because I know that Micronesia, it consists of many different atolls, many different populations, but because I mainly focused on a few of the atolls, I didn't consider the entirety of the Marshall Islands or Micronesia in general. Thank you for your question.
There is a just want to provide a resource. I know that we referred to the beacon page. I'm just going to share it really quickly just to showcase something that we've developed there, which actually Kristin was instrumental in putting together. Their Pacific Nuclear Test Map. So if you click on this, it actually brings you, and I'll put the link in the chat. It brings you to a Google map that we developed based on some knowledge that we had obtained around the impact of, or the different testing that had been done around the Pacific. As you can see, get to Bikini, we were able to zoom in a little further.
I do, Kathy Jetnell spoke about tens of thousands total being exposed to radiation and experiencing health problems. Bikini Atoll, as Jose just pointed out, particularly exposed. And yes, there hasn't been adequate compensation and medical care, in spite of the Compactor Free Association and some of those efforts. I want to say thank you to you, Kristin, because you really do help with all of the sharing of stories beyond the intellectual. You really have captured some of the feelings, hard to watch, some of what you shared and hard to hear, but you are building empathy with that. And thank you for that Beacons page too. I hope everyone goes to check that out. But really appreciate your efforts to continue to spotlight stories that have been too often thrust into the shadows or just ignored.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Actually, thank you so much also for those videos you shared. I know some of them got cut off, but I did provide the link in the chat, and I'll add it as well to the summary on the YouTube channel so folks can watch it. on their own later. But one thing that occurred to me was like, especially that testimonial from the Marshallese survivor, that was from like 11 years ago. All I could think about, I know the AJ plus other video was only 9 months ago, but I wonder, are there many, from the Japan side, there's a big focus on like tracking down the hibakushas and the atomic bomb survivors, and how many do we have left, and there's that kind of concern, and I rarely hear that conversation when it comes to Marshallese testing survivors of the nuclear test. Are there still any around? Is there any data about those folks? When we were building this online database, we realized there were all these websites of like, oh, you can, there's a couple hibakusha websites for Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You can click on different photos and you can read up on their testimonials and or videos that are provided to them. But I didn't see anything. I couldn't find anything quite like that when it comes to the Pacific Islands or the Marshallese Islands. And so it definitely, there's more work to be done. I also Okugura-san's testimony that she gave in Hiroshima. One of the unique things that kind of resonated with me about was she shared a little bit beyond the testimony of what she experienced, about how the shame that, nowadays, as we reflect back, there's great honor and respect for hibakushas and what they've gone through, and that they're still with us to be able to share their stories. But she shared about shortly after the bombing, the next decade, 2 decades after that, and how there was great shame brought upon hibakushas. It's like, oh, you have this mutated gene, like, I don't know if you're the right type of person for, my son or daughter. It was quite just disgusting, the way humanity reacted. And so I wonder if there might have been similar experiences like that within the survivors of Marshallese testing as well. So I don't know, just lingering questions that I have, not ones that I expect you to answer, but just some commentary that I've noticed. I always love asking questions around self-care, and especially delving into this really, intense topic and issues of history and that continue on till today, especially you being in the public health sector, which is, we're slowly moving out of global pandemic, which has not been easy for folks, especially folks in the public health field. Do you have any words of wisdom on self-care? How do you process this stuff? Because as it is, just engaging with one of these moments in history is a lot to digest and take on, but you took on 3 moments, multiple moments in history. So if you have any guidance, and I'd greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, as a public health student, I tend to kind of look more in an expanded version of how events impacted not just the individual, but the community and the environment that they surround themselves in. I don't want to think too irrationally on these issues, because it is an important thing that kind of ongoing in today's history, and even in future generations and future events that might take place. It's important to acknowledge what happened in the past and try to move in a way that supports the community, help them through intervention, rather than backtracking history and making the same mistakes that we made before. So I guess my words of wisdom is to not take these events as a grain of salt. There's little stories that are hidden that you may not know or have heard about. But once you do, it kind of opens up your mindset to how critical the issues are, and how important it is to raise awareness, to not only to yourself, but to others who might not know about that side of history.
Thank you. You've had really wonderful guidance in your education in the public. And next time I come across my colleagues in the public health department, I'm gonna rave and let them know they did a good job. So thank you so much for the work that you're doing and that you're continuing to do. For folks who may not be aware, she is graduating soon, and so she'll be heading out into the world. And I look forward to continuing to be in community and seeing how I always love reflecting upon experiences in our lives and how they affect the trajectory of where we tend to go about it. And so I don't know if anybody else in the audience has any kind of questions. Just want to provide one moment for folks if there's anybody out there. All right, well, I will just want to thank you, Kristin, for allowing us to learn about the community and your research, your perspectives, your insights. I truly appreciate you opening up about your experiences, lessons learned. Thank you for your kindness, your leadership as we continue to learn about the tragic impact of nuclear bombs. And last but not least, thank you for joining today's in our audience and who's out there joining today's webinar or catching this recording later on. We deeply appreciate your interest and support here in our continuous journey to build a nuclear-free world. Thanks again, everyone.